Hi guys. So this I've laid out, I think, a complete collection of my vintage flushometers that I've collected over the past number of years. Most of them have come from eBay in one way or another. A couple of them from old toilets that I salvaged. This one came with my 1927 standard Devoro. It's made by Philip Haas Company of Dayton, Ohio. This is a very rare one. I don't know if I could ever get it working. It would need some parts, and you can't get parts for it anymore. I suppose I could try making them, but it'd be kind of a rinky-dink attempt. But it's pretty interesting. It's nickel plated and not chrome. That was typical before the early 30s. Chrome plating wasn't very popular before then. All the Sloane stuff is chrome. This is a new old stock, so it's never used. Sloane Naval quiet flush. And it's a piston type valve, not a diaphragm. And the Naval was designed for use. It was designed to be able to flush salt water on ocean-going boats and marine applications. And this is another new old stock Sloan Royal. The exact model number is a 120, and that just means that it has this flush L connection. Something like this would usually be used on a backspud toilet, like a forward trap or a reverse trap like a Kohler Brooklands. It has a V100 style vacuum breaker, which is pretty rare because they stopped making these in the 60s. Nowadays the vacuum breaker is built in. I don't know if you can see, there's slots cut in that tube. The vacuum breaker is built into the flush tube itself, but back before the 60s, if it even had a vacuum breaker, it was a separate unit that was cast brass like this. And let's see, it has a hand wheel stop valve, bullet shaped handle. These old style Sloane Royals were made up until 1971. Let's see if I can take this, well, maybe I can take this one apart. This is another one. It's in pretty rough shape. It's all corroded. It has another V100 style vacuum breaker. This one's been rebuilt to take the new style rubber sack. I don't know if I can show you. Originally, this style had, I don't know if you can see that in there, kind of like a rubber flapper. And those haven't been available since the 60s. This one was new, never used, so that's why it still exists. This one has a screwdriver stop. I've rebuilt it. All new rubber parts, new packing nuts. Maybe I can open this one up. Some of these are regular Royals, some of them are called a Royal Quiet Flush because they were designed to be quieter. So you'll find an inner cover. The old ones have a brass inner cover, the new ones, this is plastic. and you'll find a diaphragm assembly with a relief valve. Old ones are metal, new ones are plastic. And on the new valves, this guide here is plastic, but on the old ones it's brass. And this whole assembly screws apart. You can replace the rubber diaphragm and the molded rubber disc, put new ones on, and you can keep this brass guide. This little ring here can come off. You can unscrew. You probably can't do it with one hand, but this ring is removable. If you remove it, it turns it into a 4.5 gallon flush. With this ring on, it's a 3.5 gallon flush. It just goes in there. The whole thing screws back together. This is just another control stop that is a straight stop. It also takes a screwdriver. It's not an angle stop like these. This is another vintage Royal Quiet Flush. It's actually a Quiet Flush 2, a little later version. Some extra handles. This is an old porcelain handle. I think these were made in the 20s, teens and 20s. Just an extra bullet handle. I've noticed some of these old vintage handles are fatter than others. I think the fat ones are probably from the 50s and older. These slender ones seem to be from the 60s mostly. This is a Sloane Star. I think these were made back in the 40s and 50s. It's a piston valve. This was kind of like a low-end, basic piston style flush valve. This one is raw brass. It's not plated, which is kind of weird. This is the first vintage flushometer I ever had. It came off of a 1951 standard Madeira. It also has a V100 style vacuum breaker. This is a Delaney Rex, which is basically like a compact diaphragm type flushometer. You can see that rubber there is a seat bumper. So the seat will rest on that rubber bumper and it won't leave a mark in the seat. Delaney flushometers are very similar to a Sloane. The design of the parts is a little bit different. They have a leather diaphragm instead of a rubber one, but they work basically the same. This is not vintage. This is a 1.6 gallon per flush Regal, but it's an angled, like a 90-degree angle model with I can't remember exactly what they call it. It's like a 3-inch swivel plate flush handle. I'm not sure exactly the purpose of it. I don't think it's ADA compliant, so you don't see them often. This is just a newer Royal that came with one of these other vintage ones, probably. You can see the difference. The newer handle and new valves even have a longer handle. The long rough brass valve that you see is a vintage Royal from the 50s. I believe 152 is the exact version. This is a concealed toilet flushometer. You can see it has a push button handle. You could also have a regular handle inside there. Vintage style cap with a straight stop. These usually have a straight stop. and you can see the flush pipe that goes to the toilet. That's where the toilet spud would be. And this button and escutcheon plate is all you would see outside the wall. If you could look behind the wall, this is what you would see. That's what the valve looks like. So all this handle assembly really is you got a button, and then there's a rod. I'm going to lay this back down. There's a rod that goes through this tube into the flushometer, and it serves the purpose of a regular handle that you normally see. So there you go. These things are heavy. You put 4 or 5 of them in a bucket and it weighs about 35 pounds.